Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to England once again, and we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. These guys are very new from what I understand, and this is a beer that I was very kindly given by my good friend Harry over at Blue Notes Beer Reviews. So big shout out to Harry for making this review possible. For this one then we are going to head to Swindon in Wiltshire, which is about halfway between Bristol in the west and London in the east, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Rusty Garage Brewery. So this one is called the Broken Axle. It comes in at 8.5% ABV, and this one is an old ale. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. As you can see, this beer is a 1 litre plastic bottle, and it's quite unusual actually to find this in England from what I understand. The last time I had beer out of plastic bottles was in the Czech Republic actually. So yeah, quite interesting to see that. I'd never seen that before with an English brewery, as I mentioned to you. But yeah, definitely curious to see how this one turns out. This is a very new brewery, and it is a former colleague of Harry's who started up this one. So yeah, definitely an interesting review this one I think, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well then. So let's see how we get on. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Rusty Garage Brewery. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Rusty Garage Brewery then, on to my brewery notes. So Rusty Garage Brewery, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Swindon in Wiltshire, in the south of England, kind of towards the southwest though I guess we could say. But the company was founded back in 2019 and started brewing their beers the following year in 2020. The main man behind this brewery is Marek Czernak, who is Polish, and he originally studied biotechnology, but he studied brewing in Poland and then completed a master's degree in it and then moved to England in 2005. He worked for Honda for a period of time, but also for a number of different breweries, including Dartmoor, who are in Cornwall, then Castlecombe, and also the Ramsbury Brewery, where he worked with my friend Harry, and this was before he set up his own company. But as of January 2021, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, these guys have produced around 15 different kinds of beer, and there seems to be quite a few different varieties in there as well actually, so that's pretty interesting. But yeah, a very new brewery, and they seem to be getting a good reception in Swindon actually. So yeah, definitely cool to review a beer from these guys at such an early stage in their history, and I'm sure when I do go down to visit Harry at some point fairly soon, we will be able to go and have a little look at this place. That would be quite fun. To go and have a little look at the brewery, maybe film a little out and about video or something like that. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about this brewery actually. Very new, so not a lot to report on them, but yeah, definitely cool to have another brewery on the channel that Harry has a bit of a connection to actually. So yeah, this is quite cool. But yeah, as I can say, if you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Beer Advocate and Untappd pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So I'm guessing Rusty Garage is maybe a reference to the fact that that you know, Marek used to work for Honda. I'm guessing, I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty nice. It's pretty kind of straightforward actually. It has a little bit of that kind of homebrewed vibe to it, which I think is pretty cool. But there you can see nicely presented beer, this one. Says on the back here, yeah, brewed and bottled, canned in the UK by Rusty Garage Craft Brewery Limited, Unit 115, Rivermead Business Centre, Swindon. Says on the sides contains barley, maize, molasses, and brewed with Fuggles hops. So that should be quite interesting. Remember that an old ale there's quite a few different variants of old ale. Some of them can be really big and caramelly, some of them can be more kind of earthy and stuff like that. I think there's about 3 or 4 things. The old ale I think is probably one of the least defined beer styles around that you're going to find actually. Probably the most accessible old ale to a lot of people would be something like the Old Curmudgeon from that's from Founders, if I remember rightly, or is that the North Brewing one? I forget. But yeah, Old Curmudgeon, whichever brewery it is that does that, is probably one of the best known kind of old ales, if you like. But yeah, this one I think should be quite nice. 8.5% ABV, a 1 litre plastic bottle this, which is pretty cool. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. I'm just curious to see what this has in store for us. So, ooh, it does smell quite nice. It smells very traditional actually, like a very kind of traditional English beer this. But at 8.5%, this one should be quite interesting. So I think that should be about enough. Have a wee look at it. Yeah, should be quite good. So yeah, there we go. So as you can see, and as you could already see because the bottle was clear, this beer, it actually pours, I'm not sure how well that's going to show, but it's actually a really nice kind of rich mahogany and slightly ruby kind of colour, this one. It does have a little bit of a natural haze to it, but at the same time it's got a little bit of transparency. You can see there's 1 or 2 bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, but I mean overall it looks pretty nice. There was virtually no head out of this beer as you kind of poured it into the glass. You can see there is a very slight foamy layer around it, and it looks as if it would be a sort of creamy, slightly fawny type coloured thing that you get out of this. But yeah, as I say, a nice kind of reddy, it's almost like a very dark copper, kind of chestnutty type colour actually. That's probably a better descriptor of how this beer actually appears, to be honest with you. Especially when you stick the light through it, it gets a little bit more of that kind of ruby hue to it. So yeah, very, very nicely presented, I have to say. It looks like a nice one, this. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma in this beer then and just see how we got on. You can smell it's nice and kind of sugary from the start, so let's go for it. Yeah, quite interesting, I have to say. Yeah, it's got, you know, it's got a typical kind of more, it's got quite a traditional sort of English base to it, if that makes sense. So you get a good little bit of brown bread out of this one. It's almost quite sweet, like a sort of rye bread, if you like, but you can definitely smell the molasses in this. It says they've added molasses into this beer as an adjunct or whatever, but yeah, you get a good little bit of a kind of sweet caramel out of the beer, but you get that darker, more kind of caramelised molasses kind of sitting in there as well. But yeah, there's some nice McVitie's digestive biscuity notes coming out of the beer, which I think is goes together really nicely as well. But yeah, the aroma that comes out of this beer, I think, is pretty nice for sure. Yeah, it is really kind of traditional, but it's an aroma that really grows on me. The molasses gets darker and darker the more that you smell of this one. So yeah, as I say, good little bit of a kind of brown bready base to it. You get 1 or 2 kind of woody and nutty elements pushing their way out of the beer the further you go into the aroma with it. But yeah, definitely that big treacly molasses sort of thing. You've got that sweeter caramel element to it, a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity thing, but underneath all of that, bit of brown bread, some kind of woody elements to it, little touch of nuttiness, and I would say that kind of sums up the kind of malty side of the beer quite well. On the hoppy side of things, there's definitely a little bit of earthiness in there. I would have thought that the kind of ashy character that you get from the Fugels would be a little bit more kind of pungent in this one. So you do get a little bit of it, but not too much. So there's quite a strong earthy component to this beer. You get a little bit of herbal quality in there. There's a fair little bit of floral aromaticity and a good bit of a kind of lighter grassy note in this one as well. But I would say the grassiness does actually have a little bit of aromaticity of its own, which is quite interesting. But yeah, when it comes to the fruity side of things, it does have a wee sort of phenolic kind of cough syrupy medicine thing about it. So it has got a wee bit of that, and quite often you can get that when you add different kind of candy sugars and stuff into these beers. So it does have a wee touch of like that, you know, Belgian Dubel type thing to it. It's got a little bit of that kind of phenolic thing from the sugars in this one. So absolutely, a little bit of that in here. But yeah, little I would say a little bit of a kind of juicy plummy note. There's a little bit of a kind of figgy element to it, and you've also got a wee bit of you've also got a nice little bit of a kind of more juicy kind of blackcurranty type note out of this one as well, maybe blackberries to be honest with you. So yeah, a little bit of a phenolic-y medicine-y sort of thing, stuff like that. But yeah, I really like how all of that goes together actually. I think the aroma of this one, it has that really traditional English feel to it actually, and I don't think I've ever had like a proper English traditional old ale, if that makes sense. So this one should be quite interesting. I think probably the only one that might come close to that is Thomas Hardy, but I think Thomas Hardy was more of an English barley wine than an old ale, if I remember rightly. So yeah, we always get the Thomas Hardys through Systembolaget in Sweden. But yeah, I think this beer should be really interesting. So let's have a taste of it. This one is the Broken Axle. Coming in at 8.5% ABV, an old ale from Rusty Garage Brewery in Swindon in Wiltshire. Big shout out again to Harry at Blue Nose Beer Reviews for making this review possible, and cool to have a brewery that is started by one of his old colleagues at the Ramsbury Brewery. So yeah, let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. That's pretty solid actually. That is quite nicely done, I have to say. Yeah, that's a solid beer actually. Yeah, if this is how they're doing their kind of more malty stuff, you know, I'd be curious to try like a Doppelbock or a Scotch ale or something from these guys at some point. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, and I need to try something from the light end of the spectrum, like a lager or an IPA. Or something like that, but yeah, I have to say this is pretty damn solid actually for a kind of more traditional sort of English beer, because it definitely comes across as being a bit more traditional, to be quite honest with you. It is definitely more traditional, but yeah, I like how this one goes together, absolutely. Yeah, flavour of this one I think is very nice, absolutely. Definitely grows on you the more that you have of it. But yeah, where to start with this one then? So the backbone of this beer is really nice, and it's a mixture of bread and wood, to be honest, that you get in this one. I mean, in that middle third of your palate, you get a nice sort of kind of woody base to the beer. And then on top of that you get a sort of brown bready kind of thing actually, which is quite interesting. So yeah, there's a sort of brown almost, it's not quite rye bread, it's a little bit like a very grainy kind of wholemeal bread. So a bit of wood under there, the wholemeal kind of bread, that forms the backbone of the beer for me. If you move, okay, we're just talking about the middle third of the palate just now, but if you move into a little bit towards that border region between the middle third and the back third of your palate, there is a little bit of a kind of more bread crusty quality to the beer, and as you move into the back third of your palate you can feel the breadiness just kind of thickens up a little bit. That's probably the influence of the yeast, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, it does have a little bit of a kind of slightly thicker and fairly smooth actually brown bready note in that back third of the palate there. But yeah, again, as you move further forward, the beer smoothens out a little bit. As you reach the border region though, the thickness just drops away a little bit, and then you get that kind of more brown bready quality just kind of sitting out on sitting on top of that. But yeah, in the middle of your palate you can feel there's a little bit of the corn for me, you can feel a little bit of that kind of corny sweetness that comes out of the beer a little bit more the further you go into the aftertaste. So the way everything's going together in this one I think is pretty nice actually. But the molasses in the flavour here, that comes out more and more the further you go into the aftertaste. So sitting on top of that brown bready note in the middle of your palate, you can feel the kind of corn in there, and then on top of that you've got these big brown sugars. You can feel that really thick, oily treacle molasses sort of thing there right in the middle of your tongue. But as you move further out from the centre of your palate, it does have a wee bit of a kind of straight up caramel, but then as you move out towards the edge of your tongue, it's got a little bit more of a kind of biscuity sort of thing, a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, absolutely. But yeah, it's a solid beer this. It's nice. I mean, if this is some of the early stuff that they're doing, they're only going to get better and better as they produce more things. So yeah, this is, in terms of the malty side of this beer, it is pretty nice actually, so thumbs up to them. Let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer then. Yeah, so hoppy side of things, again, pretty traditional in English in that sense. In the back corners of the palate then you've got a little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it's got a nice kind of smooth herbally quality, and as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, it's got a little bit of kind of floral aromaticity to it. Then round the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and more and more kind of grassy actually. So yeah, I think the further you go into the aftertaste, more of the earthiness comes out, more of the herbal quality kind of sits there. So yeah, those are the two most kind of prominent components of this beer for me. And yeah, I like how that pieces together in this one, to be honest with you. So thumbs up to Rusty Garage for this once again. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, as I always say, on that front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. If you go towards the border region between middle third and front third of your palate, there is a little bit of a kind of cakey note to this one. It's like a sort of Christmas puddingy kind of thing that you get out of this one. But yeah, as you move further forward, underneath that, underneath the fruity part of the beer, that's where you get the that's where you get the you get quite a nice just cakey sort of fruity note out of this one. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you've got a little bit of a you do have a little bit of a kind of sort of datey kind of thing coming out of this one. It's got a little bit of that kind of datey, pruny sort of thing. There's a bit of that red fruity note there. But yeah, as you move further forward, it's got a little bit of a figgy quality. Then as you reach the front half of that front third of your tongue, there's a little bit of blackcurrant there. I don't get quite so much of the oily blackberry that I thought I was going to get based on the aroma. But yeah, it's quite a dried, fruity character that you get with this one. Definitely a little bit of a kind of sultana type quality to the beer in terms of the fruitiness as well. So yeah, I really like how all of this goes together actually. So yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me actually. I mean, it's definitely got that kind of traditional English element to it, which I quite like, and I've never had that in an old ale before, so that's probably what's making me kind of sort of lean towards this one actually. I think this is a very nicely executed beer, but on the basis of this I would be curious to try a couple of the IPAs and stuff like this actually. I'm not sure whether they tend to lean more towards the kind of traditional thing or tend to be like more of an American style brewery, or maybe they kind of straddle the line in between. I'm not too certain, but as I say, they've only brewed like 15 or so beers so far, and I'm sure we'll see more from them in the future actually. But on this one, thumbs up to them. I think this is pretty solid actually, especially for such an early beer in their kind of history, if you like. I think this brewery has literally been open about 5 months, something like that. But yeah, it's pretty good. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel of this one then, I'd say that's kind of, it's mid-bodied. That's the one thing about this beer, is that it's very, very slick and mid-bodied. Actually, I mean, you might expect, from an old ale, you might expect a little bit more in terms of the mouthfeel of this one. You might expect it to be a little bit thicker, but on the other side, on the other hand, this one is only 8.5%. It's not like it's a big kind of 11% beast. So yeah, you have to bear that in mind with this one. It is quite I'd say that this is mid-body, like right in the middle of the spectrum. Very smooth carbonation and very slick in terms of its mouthfeel. In terms of the hoppy bitterness and things, I don't think this one's got too much to it. I mean, I think it's maybe about 30, 40 IBUs, something like that. Although in fairness, most of the bitterness is coming from the Fugo hops in this, and I don't find it overly ashy. That's the thing. I always found Fugos was a very ashy kind of hop actually, but the earthiness in this one comes across quite nicely. Fugos I've always thought is a hop that I've never been that keen on, but I think in you know, porters and stouts it can work very nicely. But this shows you that in a kind of more brown bready, brown sugary type malt base, that it can also work, which I wouldn't have thought before. So yeah. Interesting. I think yeah, maybe about 30ish IBUs to this beer, but yeah, malt base, like I say, quite a bit of veininess and dryness to it. Lots of big kind of brown sugars, and also just a little bit of kind of fruity, juicy character as well. So yeah, really interesting beer this one, I have to say. So yeah, thumbs up to Rusty Garage for this. I think they've produced a solid beer here, and I like the fact, as I say, this is my first old ale I think that has a bit more of a kind of English tint to it, if that makes sense. And the old ale originally was an English beer, from what I understand. But yeah, thumbs up. Yeah, thumbs up to Rusty Garage for this. I look forward to trying a few more of their beers at some point in the future. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one was the Broken Axle, an 8.5% old ale from the Rusty Garage Brewery in Swindon in Wiltshire, down in the kind of southwestish part of England. I think a really interesting brewery, this one. So hopefully more reviews to come from these guys on the channel at some point soon. But once again, thank you to Harry for arranging this review for me, sending me up this beer. And yeah, it's been quite cool to do this one for you. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this. Let's leave it at that for this review. Thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Rusty Garage Brewery. We will return to these guys at some point soon, as I said, but in the meantime, thank you for watching. This one was the Broken Axle Old Ale at 8.5% ABV, nicely done, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers, thank you again to Harry, and I look forward to having this brewery on the channel for you again. Slàinte just now.